So we don't look at a verbatim feedback at the end of a week of work or 2 weeks of work and say, how do we do? What went well? What was adding value? What didn't add value? And just kind of just slough it off as, well, kind of went okay. We'd say, why did that? What happened? What could we do different? And we're constantly asking these questions, not to say, Josh, what did you do this week? But to rather say, Josh, of what you did, what did you learn? Because by creating a better learning environment, our performance goes up.
Welcome to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. I'm your host, Josh Ramsey, and today on the show, we have Anthony Coppedge. Now, I'm super excited about this because as the principal agile sales leader for global digital sales at IBM, Anthony spearheaded the vision for how client-centered business agility is infused into digital sales. He relishes the chance to sabotage mediocrity and fuels his heart by mentoring, writing, teaching, and coaching a variety of audiences. He started applying agile in marketing in 2009 at a software company and has been iterating and learning ever since then, especially about how to reframe the dynamic between marketing and sales. Thank you so much for being with us, Anthony. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, this is going to be fun, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So we use Agile as well. Well, we use Agile and Sprint and a bit of Scrum. So let's start off there. That's the first word that jumps out at me. Where do you want to take this?
So I really focus on business agility because the idea of agile, either people have heard the term or they think they know what it means. And usually it's somewhat off base from what it really is about. So agile was invented around 2001 as a way specifically for software developers to say, how do we get code out better, more frequently, and stop the whole mess of the slow way of doing things. Was you would have this big idea and this huge plan, and you would try to execute against it. And then by the end of the year, you go, how do we do? And that's usually too late, right? So it was this idea of how do we do that sooner? Well, the principles and values of Agile were really the starting point. They wrote a manifesto, because who wouldn't? And from that came this idea of there is a better way of working. So Agile used to denote that for software. Today, it's taken on so many meanings that it's probably too watered down. I talk about business agility because ultimately what we're trying to do is deliver value consistently and at scale. Now, for a large enterprise, that's a different scale than a small business, but the principles are identical. So what I've learned to do is take the values and principles and say, that's what we focus on. They're our truth, they're our rubric, by knowing, is the work we're doing actually creating and delivering value for the benefit of our clients? So business agility is our way of doing that. It's changing it from what's in it for us to what's in it for them, where them is our audience.
Yeah, keeping it focused where it needs to be focused. And what have you seen change in Agile since then? That's wonderful. What are we at there? That's 13 years.
Well, it's a long time. I think what I saw first was a way to bring order to the chaos of marketing. Marketing always felt like hair on fire, responding to change, always dealing with the requests that were coming in and the demands and the urgency from sales and what we need. And it was always hard to prioritize and understand that the action being requested was actually going to deliver value. I mean, I remember working at a company. It was a smaller company. I led it for Europe and United States. And I led marketing there. And when I came in, they asked me to build an agile marketing organization. That's why I was hired. And what I was told by the team the first day, they said, well, your boss, Anthony, is the guy who is the number one dude who is the interrupt-driven king. So he's going to come in with all these great ideas last minute, and it throws us off. So it's really hard for us to plan and execute because his name was Brent. Brent will always come in with these last-minute ideas. And I said, okay. So for the first 6 months, we're going to let him do that. And I want you to trust me that we're going to demonstrate something over time. So we'll do that. So the first thing I did is I created a visual flow. I said, where is the work prioritized and why is it prioritized? Not what are the tasks to be done, what are the outcomes we want to achieve? And this was the first big shift, to not say, did you do a thing, but what happens because you did the thing? What are we aiming for? What is the outcome? And so we visualize that, and I use a Kanban board to just say from left to right, how do we flow work to understand the prioritization of things does or doesn't lead to the creation of value? And so we did this for the 6-month period, and inevitably, Brent would call or get an email or come in, depending on which office he was in, and he would have, I got this great idea. And I would say, great. All right, boss, what's the great idea? And he goes, I want to do X, Y, Z, and I want it by Friday. And I go, okay. So I come over to the board and I put it up on there and I go, we're gonna prioritize that. We'll make that happen. And I did this. In this first 6 months, we were able to do a couple of things. One, we planned our work so much better, because if you visualize the truth, Josh, you can talk about it and you can understand what's working, what's not, because you can literally see it and have the conversation. But number two was we were able to track, and I just had one of my team members do an Excel spreadsheet. It was very simple. How many of these were planned versus Brent or anybody coming in last minute, right? And then what was it and who asked for it? Then, because it's marketing, we can measure. So over those 6 months, we measured the efficacy of the work we planned versus the unplanned requests. And we said, what is the ROI? What's the return on that amount of effort? Because that interrupt-driven effort still took time, but it usually focused us to do less quality because we had an even shorter time frame than something that we would have planned. So what I expected turned out to be true. 6 months later, I bring at the executive lead team, and I said, I'm going to show you 3 slides. And on these 3 slides, I want you to agree now before I show them to you that where people's names are there. This is not to shame anybody. We're going to talk about that this is data-driven truth. This is not Anthony's opinion. And number 3, we're committing that if we talk about it and we reveal something, we're going to act on it. Do you agree? And they all agreed. Yeah, of course, this is great. So the first slide showed the total amount of effort that we had put in and the results we had seen so far, right? And so it was very easy to have that kind of just visualized, what was the total amount of brand awareness, and what was our demand gen, and what was our lead conversion, and what was our pipeline looking like, and what was the conversion rates throughout that pipe. We had all the data, and so they were very pleased to see that. And then the second slide was, but now here's that same thing adjusted for non-interrupt driven planned work only. And the conversion rates were higher. The percentages of opens were higher. The time on page was longer. I mean, you just pick any of the metrics and it was generally much better. In fact, when I showed the third slide, which was all the interrupt driven work, and here I had who asked for it. Well, 86 or 88% of it was Brent, right? So it was no surprise. We were able to say, literally from a performance standpoint, this unplanned, short, urgent, air quotes, work is 1/5 as effective. So it's 500% more effective if you let us plan. 500. So if you want good results, you need to understand there's a cost. If you come to me and say, we still need this tomorrow, okay, the answer will be yes, but you are now understanding that that's not free. And that the chance of it being as successful as something, if you just gave us time, put it into the backlog and work on it, is probably going to be 1/5 as much. Is it worth that? And it was a game changer because no one knew this. They intuitively probably had some ideas, but until I made it a data-driven conversation and said, this is what the stats show, I remember saying to Brent, you may have great ideas. We'll never know. Because we don't have the time to take your ideas and actually build them out. Agile gave us a way to work towards creating better outcomes for the benefit of the client, not to just satisfy a stakeholder.
That is mind-blowing. And on so many levels, right? I mean, just that 5-to-1.
5-to-1.
And I think there's just something so fantastic about all that hard work, let alone the work. The tracking, that's working on the business, not working for.
Not in the business, yeah.
And here you pop out 6 months later, and your one big question that you leave that person with, or you leave Brent or whoever else, is this worth doing at 1/5 the efficiency? I mean, that is just mind blowing. The power of data, Okay, so what happened? What did Brent do in the meeting?
Yeah, he's first of all he apologized. He smiled, laughed a little bit, apologized. Like I know, I bring a lot of good ideas, and that's when I use that line of Brent. You may have great ideas. We'll never know. And he really laughed at that one. And he's like, okay, I get it. But what did he do? He still came back and said, I know, but there's this thing, and we really need to. And I go, okay, is this thing something that's really needs to be done that fast, or could we plan for it? Yeah. And quite often, it turned out it wasn't that urgent. So I actually had, I'm sure you're familiar with this, and I'm sure the listeners are, and the viewers are here, the Eisenhower matrix of the 4 quadrants, and then the top left is urgent and important, right? And then urgent but not important, then important, not urgent, and then neither. And it's the do, defer, delegate, delete kind of thing, right? It's that idea of very, very little is both urgent and important. Yeah. So I have to ask the question, why is that urgent? Not why is it important? I mean, we can get to that, but does it require, because urgent in my mind says we're stopping the presses, everything halts, the assembly line pulls the red, thing, and this is the number one thing. Is it that urgent? Well, no. Okay, so if it's not that, then let's go ahead and put it in our backlog and we'll plan for it. We'll execute on this. But it probably doesn't need to be done today. And we'll probably do it 5 times better.
Do it 5 times better. So yeah, what a great question. You're looking, Brent, the Brents of the world in the
Brents of the world, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to do this now, or do you want me to do it 5 times as well in 2 weeks, or whatever you've worked out?
There you go, Josh.
Oh man,
you get
that is, just love data, and I think it saddens me, and I've been that person. It's like data's boring. Just shoot from the hip. You gotta just be creative and just spontaneous and just. Get into the market and
the better your data, the more they're really it's a both and that's not that's attention demand is not a problem to solve, right? Because if you think about it, really great data should let you ask better questions. Because if you ask better questions, you're basically saying, how creative can we be? So if you want greater creativity, look at data. Leverage data. That's not boring. That's insight, right? And I have a saying. We do this around all kinds of things. Marketers measure all of the vanity metrics and everything else. But ultimately, one of the things we don't measure enough of is feedback. And what I want to understand is the feedback from the stakeholder. I want to understand the feedback from the client, feedback from the teams. So I have that trifecta of feedback. And what I say is this: feedback is a gift. But if you aggregate feedback, that's actionable intelligence, because now that's data. So we don't look at a verbatim feedback at the end of a week of work or 2 weeks of work and say, how do we do? What went well? What was adding value? What didn't add value? And just kind of slough it off as, well, kind of went okay. We'd say, why did that? What happened? What could we do different? And we're constantly asking these questions, not to say, Josh, what did you do this week? But to rather say, Josh, of what you did, what did you learn? Because by creating a better learning environment, our performance goes up. You perform better when you do more of what works and less of what doesn't. In his book, Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about that there's only 2 ways to succeed. You either optimize upside or you decrease downside. Full stop. There's no other 2. That's it. That's all you get. So it's much harder usually to optimize upside. That's normally an incremental, very small, slow amount. It's very hard to do that well, fast. But it's really easy to stop the stupid, right? It's really easy to look at the things that aren't working and go, why are we doing that? Well, that's the way the legacy system. Why is the legacy system that way? And you keep asking those 5 whys, usually by 3 you're there, and you say, oh, well, the root of that is this. And then you have the data to go, well, here's the impact. Let me tell you a story about that. I had a sales team working, and we partner with marketing. So I look at it as sales with marketing, not sales and marketing, right? So the distinction exists inside the organization. There is a sales and marketing set of teams, but we cross-functionally look at shared objectives. How do we share the outcome and have our discrete measurements and our discrete work towards that outcome? Because the client, we're not doing it for us. I mean, big shocker for everybody. Your clients didn't go into business to be a profit center for your business, right? That's not why they're in business. So we want to know, how are they successful? So that requires a feedback loop. So I had this group of sellers that their job was to work a really large enterprise account. So they were account-based management with account-based marketing, right? And so this particular was telco and telecom. And so what ended up happening is they knew that the ordering software that we wrote, that said, when the client wants to buy more of this product, they just use our little portal. They go in, they order it, it goes through, does the invoicing, billing, everything. Except it had a known bug. And every once in a while, that bug would prevent the order from going through. And it was kind of hard to figure out what the variables were. So it was just, hey, seller, when that happens, you're going to get a call from your client, solve it. And that didn't sound like a big deal. But this team said, this seems to be happening more and more frequently. So on their own, no manager involved, self-directed team, right, said, how often, how much time do we take to do that? You know what they found out? They found out 3 really important things. One, it actually happened an average of 2 to 3 times per week per seller. So this is a team of 5 people, right? That's 15 interrupt points per week. And the average was 20 to 40 minutes to kind of just call it 30 is your big average, right? So suddenly I'm taking hours of their ability to sell and provide customer service away. Number 2, they're doing support work as a seller. That is not why I hired them. Number 3, the client can't get what they ordered because the system is waiting for them to solve it. So we've created an artificial bottlenecks now. And the last one, we can't bill. You can't bill for what hasn't been ordered. So this small group of sellers figured this out, tracked it for a few weeks, and went to their boss and said, here's the data. Yep. It takes this much time on average. It happens this frequently. Here's the average order size. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. That's not getting billed. That's not that, and the customer can't get this many units. I mean, like, this is a problem. Well, everybody knew it was a problem. It just wasn't perceived as a big deal until then. And once they saw the numbers, they went, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And guess what? The manager then goes and finds somebody in the product side and said, hey, this product you wrote, this little portal, has this known bug. They're like, yeah, we know. Okay, it's costing us this. That we didn't know. 2 weeks later, it's fixed, right? So feedback was a gift. But it was also actionable intelligence because it let us use their feedback to create a data point. And that data point was part of a narrative of a story of the impact, why we needed to change. And then we can go back and apply this in marketing and ops and HR. It fits anywhere. Feedback is a gift, but aggregated feedback is actionable intelligence. So super important to think about not just measuring the things that are easily measurable. I think we have to go to Galileo Galilei, who said, measure what is measurable and make measurable that is not. Measure what is measurable and make measurable that which is not, which is another way of saying Anthony's paraphrase. Measure the stuff that's easy to measure, and the stuff that's hard to measure, find a way to understand it. Because understanding it may not be a number, it may be a trend. It may have a number, but the number might not be the point. But unless you're looking for that and taking the time to understand and ask better questions, you're likely not to solve rephrase that. You're likely not to bring innovation to solve some of the problems you didn't even realize you had. And by putting feedback as a data point, not just as the measurables on the front end, both and now create this really great tapestry. So now you've got a red thread running through everything, and we can easily understand the impact of something holistically rather than just one data point or one metric at a time.
Oh man, that's a great. It's a great story about how it can be applied. And what I'm really interested in right now is this, of course, the idea of both and, which we kind of touched on twice now. But we started off with this example of Brent and the 6 month tracking. Now we got a sales team and they're tracking over, you said weeks, like maybe even said months.
Weeks.
Yeah.
Weeks.
And then, so you've got this long time scale, and then you've also got agile, which is like very responsive to what's happening now. And somehow with the both and of like tracking over a long period of time, whilst responding very quickly, both and, it's almost like you got your finger on the pulse. Like you imagine you're a doctor and you're just not taking the pulse. I wonder.
Yeah.
We just look.
It's not like you do. You actually do. Yeah. Right. You have hooked up all the things. You have the heartbeat. You have the oxygen level. You have everything about the patient that you're looking for, that you're measuring, right? You got to measure it. Yeah. But yeah, that's the point. I understand holistically more than just selectively. Rather than looking at a metric or a particular area, now I'm looking at the whole. Because the whole is about, did you create and deliver value? I come back to that phrase all the time. And that's true for my team. Hey team, did we create and deliver value? Well, what's value? Value is client facing. right? It may be important to do BAU work, business as usual work inside the business, but that's not necessarily valuable unless and until it helps us actually achieve the reason we exist as sellers, which is to serve clients, right? So everything comes back to that. Even your SLAs, your service level agreements, could be written in a way that's customer facing. So instead of saying, if the customer uses this product, you will have our product and here's your monthly fee, you could say, if your success does not achieve this by these milestones, you can get out of the contract. Because we exist to make you successful, not to achieve a billing routine with you. There's a big difference. And this is what Agile focuses on. Agile, real agility, business agility focuses on how do we make our business nimble and responsive and client-centric so that our clients are more successful. Because when it comes down to it, people won't leave value. They will leave for price, right? So when I make value the point, price is a byproduct. But if I make price the topic of consideration and I have to discount something to keep somebody, there's not much value. So by focusing on value, you go away from feature benefit, marketing and selling. You move into value proposition marketing and selling. Because ultimately marketers need to understand there's only two reasons someone's looking at your property, your website, your content. They're looking to either solve a pain point or create an opportunity to do something they currently can't do. That's it. There are no other reasons. Those are the two reasons, solving a pain point or creating an opportunity. And in the best case scenario, it's both. By solving a problem, now they can do something they've never done before. It doesn't just put a Band-Aid on it. It actually solves the root of it and lets them do something entirely new and better. Yeah. That's kind of the best of both worlds.
I love that, both and value and an opportunity solving a pain point and as well finding an opportunity that hasn't yet popped up. Man, that's there's so much in there. For those of you that are driving, if some of our listeners are driving, park the car, get out the notebook because there's a lot in here. Yeah, amazing. When I think of Agile, the first image that came to mind is kind of like a gymnast, maybe a ninja. But you're painting a picture of a very different kind of metaphor, I think, very visually. So. Now
it's a tadpole to a frog or a caterpillar to a butterfly, right? Same DNA, same organism technically, right? But the transformation is so great that there's an intentional shift away from what it was to what it needs to be. You do not slap butterfly wings on a caterpillar and optimize the caterpillar into a butterfly. You don't optimize the thing that got you to where you are. You go build the thing that's going to get you where you want to be. And usually that doesn't even resemble the past. So your DNA, absolutely consistent throughout, because that's not just your unique value proposition, that's your unique why for existing as an organization, right? What is that? Know that and have a very strong vision around that, because that's your superpower. But then say, but the expression of that has to be so radically different in the world. Why, Josh? Because the rate of change is now greater than any one change itself. Right? ChatGPT comes out, and that's a game changer, right? You look at the world of what's happening with all kinds of machine learning, game changer. Machine learning is really AI would really mostly be about automation. But what we're really thinking about is what should we apply that towards? People are not ready for the level of changes that are already here. Your business cannot possibly keep up with the change. So what you have to do is be responsive when the change happens. You need to be nimble enough, agile enough to be able to flex, to be able to say, what if, to be able to turn on a dime and say, we're going to stop that and start this. And we're going to experiment as we go, because not just A/B testing, we're going to multivariate the entire experience, including internally, right? Because if you're not understanding why something is, you're very, very likely not going to be able to achieve the results that you want from it. So if we don't ask those questions, if we don't ask better questions, we're not likely to come up with better answers.
Listening to you, it's like lighting up my brain like a fireworks display, man. This is, and I guess that's what, that's a big part of this agile approach, the nimble. I remember hearing that when a caterpillar moves into a butterfly in the cocoon, in the chrysalis, it actually liquidizes. It
liquidizes itself.
Yeah. Its caterpillarness is no longer. There's a moment where the caterpillarness ain't there, and then boom, we're into this new thing, and that's this chat GPT thing is blowing my mind. I've got the studio space that I use, and we actually got it to write a little script on a short. I've got a background in acting, and it was just fun to kind of spend a half an hour just getting led around by the creative whims of this machine. And I think you're right. We don't know how to deal with this thing. So the best thing we can do is get ready to deal with change of any sort, because it's going to blow up. I mean, wow. Yeah. So agile
marketing. I think is the new frontier, and I think it's been the new frontier. I just don't think enough people know about it yet, right? It's one of those like, the curve where you have the innovators and then the early adopters and then the early majority, late majority. So if you talk about that Chasing the Chasm, Crossing the Chasm, Jeff Moore's great book, but it's that idea of we're at that early. We're not even at the innovator. We're at the early, and early majority is already starting to happen. We're seeing the growth. There's actually a study done by Andrea Freirear. She owns Agile Sherpas, and she's partnered with Forrester and others to do these. I think it's the 5th annual Agile Marketing Survey. And what she's finding is that it's the ideas are having to be implemented because marketing can't keep up. So they're defaulting to something because they don't know what else to do. But my point is, don't look at it as like the life vest. Instead, look at it as the boat that you get into, that you get to go somewhere with, right? It doesn't just save you. It actually gives you a way forward. And so I want people to understand the idea of agility with marketing, and the idea of having business agility is less to do with, do we do it like software did it? It's more, do we have a way of thinking that helps our teams understand why and how to deliver the best value frequently and consistently? And if they're not learning, how do we get better? So in this case, when we look at our metrics, we use OKRs, objectives and key results, as our top line under our Agile model, and so our over our Agile model. And one of the things I say all the time is green's not good on the chart and red's not bad, right? They're just true. So if green is going to be seen as good, what happens, and this truly happened, what happens when I had a team, a large team, and they were able to deliver 120%, like for several quarters in a row, 120 some odd percent. Well, they're crushing it, right? Well, actually, no, they weren't. Because when you went and looked at it, it turns out that this team was smart enough to figure out how to overcome some of the stop the stupid stuff, that they couldn't stop. So there was bad systems and bad processes that they had to overcome, and they still hit 120%. Was that good? No, that's bad. Because what if it could have been 200%?
Yeah.
Right? But so we don't want to stop by assuming green is good. Likewise, red is not bad. In Agile, with agility, we see failure as a learning opportunity. So failure is not bad, as long as it's not final, right? Because what we're looking for is, if we fail frequently and quickly and get back up, if we learn, that's not actually failure. It's a good data point. So we have to have a culture of experimentation. The three principles we have is clarity of purpose, which we use OKRs to understand that. We have a culture of experimentation, because we have to say how quickly, what kind of small risk can we take frequently enough to learn faster? And then we have self-directed, self-managed. Now, I do have program managers. I have people with the title. But in that case, those managers are doing two things: clarity of work and removal of obstacles. So they're skilling people up. They're making sure we're prioritizing against what is really the value we said we would achieve. And anything in the way of that, they go champion removing the obstacle so that the team can be successful. In other words, they don't tell the team what to do. They serve the team. I had a vice president, and he said to me, I remember the first time, it was actually the second time I'd ever talked to him. And I was talking about this very concept, Josh. And he said, and he's Australian. I do a terrible Australian accent, but he's like, you're telling me that every 2 weeks we're going to be able to tell them what to do? And I said, no. Every 2 weeks they're going to tell us what to do. And that was just kind of a mind-blowing thing, because the team is closest to the problem. That also means they're closest to the solution. So we need to listen to them. So if you think about it, you could look at it as a pyramid and invert the pyramid. I just look at it as a continuum of left to right? That there are layers of authority, and it does get less and less as you go, one way or the other. So let's say the left is the top, but because it's sideways, I'm visualizing there's no rank about one above the other. There's just different levels of authority and responsibility, but we're all here to serve whom? The client. So regardless of where the idea comes from, or regardless of who owns the concept or the result, the whole team is responsible for it throughout the chain, right? That chain exists as a service mechanism, not as a mandate mechanism. So when you shift from command and control to team led, we do that through 5 values: respect, openness, courage, empathy, trust, ROCET, rocket. And if what we say is, if at any point, any one of those 5 or more than those, if it feels like you're missing or it doesn't exist or it's not being followed, we talk about it overtly, because that's not okay. Because we can't be agile if those 5 aren't true all the time. So that creates an opportunity now for what? Psychological safety, a culture of experimentation, a willingness to take risks. Right? You want to respond to change and not just react to change. You have to be willing to take frequent, small risks. Agile is easily the best way I know to do that.
Frequent, small risks. Oh man, I feel like I'm drinking from a hose over here. This is great. Yeah. So, where do we start with this? We go, okay, cool. I'm in. I'm a caterpillar. I'm slow. There's hawks buzzing around me in the form of AI and what else. I want to be a butterfly with little rocket boosters on me. Where do we start? Okay, I'm sold. Let's do this. How do we do it?
Yep. So the first thing you want to do is go and say, what are we currently trying to achieve? What are our goals? And then what are our aspirations? So when you start there, you start usually with the stakeholders and you say, what are we trying to achieve? And not just the number. What happens if we hit the number? What does that mean for the clients? What will be different in their world if we're successful, right? Because while the business does need to have revenue and the business does need to be profitable, if we create and deliver value as our primary focus, guess what happens? Revenue follows, profitability follows, assuming you're fairly priced and have a decent product or service, right? Yeah. But if that's true, if I focus on making them successful, churn goes down, conversion rates go up, because what we're doing is orienting ourselves to benefit them. So the first thing you have to do is have that look at where are you and how are you measuring that success? Is it purely internal, or is it shareholder value? Because it needs to be client value. That's number 1. Number 2, are you outcome focused or output focused? Are you focused on doing stuff, and is the measurement of stuff, and are your KPIs and your dashboards currently filled with lagging indicators? Where are the headlights? You know, my friend Deidre at a company called Workboard, which is OKR software, I really like them. Deidre is the CEO, and she says, you know, most companies look at their dashboards and they see taillights. Taillights do tell you something, but they can't tell you where you're going. So you need headlights. So in order to do headlights, you actually want to look at real-time data, including that feedback piece that I talked about earlier, and say, what is our story? What's our internal narrative? What are we learning, telling us about where we would take a left or a right based on what the headlights are showing us, right? The taillights do tell you something. I'm stuck in traffic. They tell you nothing about what you're doing next. So what we want to do is have those leading indicators, not just lagging indicators. So you're going to have to look at the way you even measure has to be evaluated. And right now, if you look at most marketing metrics, they're lagging indicators. So your leading indicators are going to be things where you say, are we improving faster? Or do we have the ability to identify a change in the market? And have we been able to substantially change the size or the quality of flow through a pipe? So whereas most marketers look at the top and they go, at the top of that funnel, you make it bigger. I'm like, what if you don't add any more at the top and you simply go from a V to a like this? You convert 100% of everything throughout. Now that'll never happen, but you would actually be more effective increasing your conversion rate than increasing the size of the top of the funnel. And that's like, well, but Anthony, that's how you do it. If you have, because statistically, if you have more leads, you have better conversion rates. Really? Actually, statistically, it goes down, because what ends up happening is you get more junk. So I think that part of that is you have to find people who both value what you value and believe what you believe. That's the ideal client. Then you have people who value what you value, don't believe what you believe. They can be converted. But if you have people who believe what you believe, just don't yet value what you value, they can be convinced, right? So now you have those criteria. If they neither value what you value or believe what you believe, send them to your competitor. Because even if you land them, they're going to be miserable, and you're going to spend more time on that unhappy, unsatisfied, poor fit client. The revenue's not worth it. So what we're trying to do is say, if we're here to serve the clients, we don't serve everybody. We serve those who we know we can create great value for. We could create and deliver great value for them. The way you do that with speed, predictability, transparency, adaptability, that's the Agile philosophies. And there's, a lot we could say about it. There's a whole episode just around that. But the idea is that that's what you would do. But you first have to start with but whom are we serving and what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? Are we focused on the client or ourselves? And beyond the metrics that we measure, what are our real performance understanding? How quickly and how well do we learn? That's actually more important, because if you get that one dialed in, your performance goes up.
Yeah. I mean, what's great about what you said there is that just holding that flag, that value flag, is going to rally a certain action, right? And totally agree that getting that clarity is going to be super important. What I'm really curious about is this idea of the leading indicators, the kind of headlight indicators, and help me paint a picture of what those actions are. So you mentioned kind of, are we improving over time? How do we even measure that?
So you will have both the measurements that you're currently used to. So you're going to start with things like saying, oh, what is our total funnel of demand gen? What is our current number of conversions that we have through our different channelization strategies, email, social, whatever. We're also going to look at our ability to take somebody through a journey and understand, usually through some level of automation, like content marketing automation, like Marketo or Pardot or HubSpot. We're looking to understand over time and create a nurture flow. So all of those things you still measure. I'm not saying don't do that, Josh. I'm saying in addition to that, you're also saying, hey, teams, of what you're working on, what's creating and delivering and adding value, what's not, and what can we change? Because if I measure that, now I'm measuring the team's, not productivity, the team's efficacy. How effective are they? And what's in the way of that? And can we address that? The next thing you would want to understand is, are we trying to ask our customers, and are we getting feedback from the customers to understand, are they receiving the value they thought they purchased? And this is more than an NPS score, right? NPS is somewhat useful, I suppose, but what you're really asking is for the verbatim feedback. So what I've done is we take verbatim feedback, we capture that, and because we do it at scale, both with the teams, I use a thing called the retrospective radar for teams, where I say, tell us your feedback for your manager. That's a circle of influence. Yeah. What do you want them to start doing, stop doing, keep doing, more of and less of? And so once I know those 5 components for the manager, I'm able to filter that feedback to the manager, and I can do this for every single team across. I did this 26 teams, right, every 2 weeks, and we were able to have tens of thousands of pieces of insight, verbatim text, just text, right, captured, and we ran it through Watson Natural Language Processor, and we said, hey, Watson, tell me what the sentiment is. Tell me what the emotion and the tone is. Tell me the keyword frequencies. So what we found was, even though these teams, many of them are, in very different industries, they don't talk to each other, we all still work for IBM. So we were finding common patterns and anti-patterns. And because we ran it through machine learning to figure out the natural language processing, we were able to say statistically, here's the data, we have a problem with this particular system and process. This particular tool, there's a problem here. And 38% of the sellers say this. And oh, by the way, so far they're saying it accounts for 4 hours a week. Well, now I do the math. I know how many sellers I have, right? Times 4 hours a week. And I can tell you, I know the average salary. So it starts telling me, oh, this is a multi-million-dollar problem. You can't afford not to fix that. Yeah. Now, everybody knows that's an issue, that's heard about it. There's been complaints, but this changes it from a complaint to a story that we can say, no, there's a weight to this. There's an impact to this. And you need to understand that it's worth solving now. That's a game changer. So those are the kind of things you measure in addition to the front end marketing pieces you're already measuring. You have to get inside your business and measure the way you go about work, the way people respond and react and learn, and how we either reward or punish that, right? Because if you have a culture of fear, you're not going to find much experimentation. If they're afraid to make a change, they don't. You're not going to innovate. You're going to maintain. You're going to have people cover their butts. You're going to have people do just enough. And it's not that they're bad people. They're trying to protect themselves. So you have to create a culture of trust. I believe, Josh, that at its core, Agile's a culture play. Because if you can change culture, man, you can change anything. But if you don't change the culture, then not much will stick, because behavior modification never lasts. But if you change someone's mind and you prove that it's safe, I mean, sky's the limit, because now you've empowered people, but with not only the delegated responsibility, but now the delegated authority to go do it. And that's a game changer for any business.
Absolutely. I'm still struck by this kind of selling ideas, the marketing department selling ideas of the business into the marketplace, selling, this pain point, clarifying that and the opportunity that might be there, but also collecting data on what is going on both internally and outside, and then selling those ideas to the exec and kind of packaging that in a way that they can go, oh, cool, there's the pain point, there's the opportunity. So either way, we have to be getting feedback all the time, just building up information. I'm
feedback is everything.
Yeah, just blown away by how it is that our brains, which can only store a certain amount of kind of retrievable information, can build systems that can hold exponentially more. And now we're starting to see kind of other intelligences as well do that. What are you most excited about? I mean, so you've got your finger on the pulse, and I think what's great about that metaphor is that you can look at the patient and you can be like, I know you're going to be okay in 6 months. In 12 months, you might even be running. In 18 months, who knows? So if you've got your finger on the pulse, you've had it on the pulse for a whole bunch of time, what's coming? And not just in terms of the fear stuff of like what we got to be aware of is coming and prepare for it, but if we do prepare, what do you see happen?
I think that the rate of change is going to, it's an easy thing to say. It doesn't take any prognostication to say that the rate of change is only going to further increase. Yeah. So the rate of change in technology in particular is going to be a force multiplier. But it's kind of like money. It's neither good or bad. It's what you do with it. ChatGPT is a really easy one. ChatGPT is kind of Gutenberg press level big, in my opinion. I think it's huge. I think it's a game changer, not because of what it does, but because of what it signals. What it signals is that the ability to take a huge amount of data, and it doesn't have access to the internet, by the way.
Yeah.
People think that it does. Yeah. It doesn't. It's a preset. It's a huge amount of data, but it's not everything. Is powerful, but not complete. Because no code, no computer algorithm is ever going to be better than the bias that created it. And everybody's got a bias. So I think what'll happen is we're going to find people leverage it for things like you're reading now. College students will use it. High schoolers use it for writing papers. And maybe, probably. But that's kind of like the incidental. The bigger thing is automation is now going from automating things to automating ways. So rather than going, I can automate this lead form, or I can automate this this landing page creation, or there's the things. There's the way we do things that starts to automate. The way we communicate can have some level of automation around it. The way we work with people can start to have automation in new ways, because you don't have to do the heavy lifting of translating what you intend to what you say. That's a big deal. So I think that's going to be a game changer of a shift. One of the fun things I did with ChatGPT, just to kind of test it, I said, so I want you to write about agile marketing, and I want you to do it in the form of a song that rhymes in the style of Lin-Manuel, right? Because I wanted to see how Encanto-ish I could make it, and it freaking nailed it in about 9 seconds. It was impressive. So it has a repository and an ability to do something that might take us a long time. Here's the upside of it. I think that if we leverage tools like that, and I don't just want to focus on this one, but if you leverage tools like that as a marketer, when instead of saying, I'm going to go write my next headline for my landing page or my email, go say, write 10 headlines around this topic focusing on this type of user, and let it generate 10 of them for you. And then go, oh, okay. Now from that, do a little bit of work and go, what would I know that it doesn't know, and how would I change that? And then give it that. I think there's a force multiplier here, because the exercise I've had people run before this tool, I've said, when you sit down before you send an email, think about how many hours it took to create that campaign. Think about the total amount of work to build everything that you're now going to push through an email or social media post. It's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Okay. Isn't it worth taking 15 minutes to write 10 versions of the subject line? Because that's going to be the most important thing you have. So what ends up happening is when we do this, your first version is the one you would probably have used. The second and third are variations of that. The fourth and fifth have to start taking a departure because you're running out of clever ways to say the same thing. And what ends up happening is 6 and 7 often become a complete, like they're nowhere close to the first two, but they're taking you down a path you wouldn't have gone down. So that 9 and 10 likely become the best of everything you've come up with. And I still think that's a great thing to do. But I think tools are going to accelerate our ability to do that and to do more A/B testing and multivariate testing to say, I've got 4 versions based on these variables, and I'm going to split my segmentation up like this with this kind of overlap, and I'm going to try to understand this so that you can then do smaller segmentations to a narrower sets of groups, see what lands, and then figure out your patterns and then go, okay, there's my big email. So now that I'm ready for the big blast to the big group, I know which one I'm going to use, right? This is the stuff that starts to change things. But now internally inside the business, actually use natural language processing like we're doing, right? Actually take your employee surveys, your marketing team surveys. And when what does it say as a whole? Not what does the word say? What is a machine looking at the huge list of all, because there's 20,000 ways in multiple languages, by the way. So we're a multinational company. So we're global. So now I have the ability to say, translate that all. And now look for the common patterns and themes of the verbs. Try to understand what the adjectives are and what is the sentiment, tone, and emotion around that. And oh, by the way, I actually took this and published it internally. So I have an internal page that anybody at IBM can see, not just our executives. So we actually publish those results every month and go, hey, here's the current sentiment, tone, and analysis of the keywords. Here are the areas where we have opportunity for growth, and here's the areas that are working well, as according to these hundreds of people or thousands of people. And now it's not hidden in some executive deck. Now everybody knows about it. Well, the accountability just went up exponentially because we know you know, right? So now we have the ability to say, we're hearing you. 2 things happen when you start actioning on people's feedback. 1, they give you more feedback because it's worth their time, and they will give you better feedback because you're actually paying attention. Now the quality of your ability to act goes up with that. So it's worth that effort to do that work, Josh, because what you're going to buy for yourself is better outcomes over time just by being an active listener and acting on what they've said, because that's going to be a reciprocal cycle that really only improves you as an organization and as a culture.
Love it. Love it. I love, and I think the example that you gave, that practical example of what happens in our brain when we do those 10 subjects. I know you mentioned a lot of amazing stuff in the last, whatever it's been, losing track of time, this last segment, but really that wielding of it, fantastic. And again, that's within our control. That's within our agile space of responding and gathering and, listening. I think it's so simple. Like if I distill what I'm hearing you say, it's so much about listen to the market, listen to each other, listen to where's the value, just listen. Listen
to your clients, listen to your teams, listen to your stakeholders. Everybody's voice is equal because they're all people with an opinion and a point of view. That's valuable. You might say the client's the most valuable because they're the one who pays. Yeah, but the people doing it probably have a bigger say in the ability for the client to receive that value than anybody. So if you're not also listening to your teams and you're only listening to your clients and your NPS scores, you're likely missing the opportunity to truly be responsive, to truly say, oh, well, if that's true, what else could there be? The key is not as marketers to have better answers, it's to ask better questions. And so you have to have really good data for that. So is this complex? No, I think the concepts are simple. I think some of the work is complex, but the concepts are simple, but it's not easy. This is hard. If anything it could be taken away from this is this looks and smells like work. Yep, it does.
Yep.
This doesn't just happen. This takes an intentional focus and some significant time. But the outcomes that we're aiming for are not, I'm not looking for a linear outcome. I'm looking for an unfair competitive advantage. I'm trying to have an exponential or a logarithmic outcome. And because of that, I'm not playing by the rules of additive. In order to us to really succeed, I have to multiply. But before I multiply, I got to remember order of operation from middle school. Remember when they had the parentheses and then the work inside the parentheses and then they'd have the multiply sign, then another set of parentheses. So if you do the work inside those parentheses and you can get rid of all the waste and low value, subtract, and you can get rid of that, when you multiply, you don't multiply the waste. But if you don't, If you just scale everything that you have today, you will scale not only the good side, you're going to scale all the bad stuff too. Because at scale is where it becomes unmanageable. So you have to deal with that. The art of subtraction is far more important than the science of multiplication. And that's true for every area of the business, but in particular, marketing and sales, where we're really trying to achieve more than a number. We're trying to achieve an outcome. So that's all I have to say about that.
Oh man, you're not getting away that easy. That's great, man. I love that idea of listening, feeding, listen. The more you listen, easier it is to listen. The more value you get from listening, listen more, and then you know more, give more, and you get more. That's.
This is on my monitor. Kind of, you can see this well. It says listen more, ask, listen again. Why? Because as you can tell, I'm verbose. I know I have plenty that I can say, but when I'm in my coaching role, I try really hard to look at this sticky and remember that I've got to listen more than I speak. And it's hard for me because I'm, like I said, verbose and I'm an extrovert. But it turns out that's one of the most important essential skills, not soft skills, essential skills I have.
Mm-hmm. And I love that as well. You know, it's you know that about yourself. You've got that self-awareness, and so you can lean into a system. So regardless of the business culture that you have, or regardless of where you are right now, you might be a hippopotamus of a business. You know, you there are things that you can do to embrace that agile, to embrace that DNA, deconstruct, reconstruct, holding true.
Yes.
And it's the start of the year, so now's the time to do it. You know, you got a whole bunch of stuff coming up on the horizon. It has been such a wonderful conversation. As we start to kind of tail off here, Anthony Coppedge, anything else you want to bring back in, remind us of, start something all new? I'm not going anywhere. This is great.
Aspire. Aspire is the word for 2023 for me, right? Because that's beyond what I can achieve. That's beyond what I can prioritize. That's beyond what I can do. Aspire is hope. And people need hope. And a really great vision both inspires and inspires, both aspire and inspire. It gives people something that's exciting and possible and achievable, but not easy. And I think a really compelling vision coupled with a great mission gives you the ability to then come back and go, okay, what's it going to look like for that to be true? And you have to take your hands off the reins, right? So you really do want to have self-directed teams, self-managed teams. Not because managers aren't useful, but because managers' best job is not telling people what to do. It's getting crap out of their way and skilling them up. So we have this opportunity to aspire to more. Oh, by the way, revenue will follow. Oh, by the way, customer loyalty goes up. Oh, by the way, churn goes down. I mean, there's great benefits to it, but the biggest thing that comes out of it is you get to become who you could be. And I can't think of anything better than that for most people. I think that's a huge thing. That's what I think, Josh. That's my final say. There you go.
Yeah, I've always got a meta-analysis part of my brain, and what I love about this conversation that we've had is that we did a lot of hard work to arrive at this point now of inspiration, hope, vision, mission. But we've done some hard work, feedback, data, listening, aggregation, Watson computers, AI, subjects, so much that's come through this conversation to pop out here where we go, okay, great. We're doing the fundamentals. We're doing the hard work. As you said, it doesn't happen by accident. It's sticky notes.
And it's not free.
It's metaphorical sticky notes all over the place, on your screen, in your Excel spreadsheets, in your exec meetings, on your slide decks. You know, top tip, have 3 slides. Anthony, what a beautiful conversation. Thank you for your time. Where can people find out about you? You know, I'm sure for those of our listeners that were driving, they're either late for their appointments or they've run out of notepads on their napkins.
AnthonyCoppedge.com. I know you'll have it in the show notes. AnthonyCoppedge.com. Or what I really love is when people connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan, and I know it's a rented space, not an owned space, but I think LinkedIn is the most useful social platform that I have. And so just search for Anthony Coppedge. It's linkedin.com/n/Anthony Coppedge. I mean, it's easy, but and AnthonyCoppedge.com. That's Cop with an extra P than Edge if you're driving and listening. So Yeah, I love connecting with people. So
and
just
you know
don't
what?
pitch me. Don't pitch me, and I'll be fine with you on LinkedIn as a connection.
Oh man, I saw the funniest picture of it was a meme of me opening my inbox on LinkedIn and this guy like running from a bear. So yeah, let's do that. Let's when we post this out on LinkedIn, if you got a question and you want to get some feedback, comment on the episode on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Put a question in there. Let's start a conversation. Let's get agile. Let's get aspirational. Let's get hopeful. Let's take care of our teams. Take care of our customers. I'm ready to rally. Let's do this.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Anthony, for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for putting in the hard work. Thank you for listening. Even when it's not in your habit, I think that's a big lesson in itself. So
thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much for being with us. And I look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn and taking up this conversation as we go into the year and beyond.
All right. Happy New Year. Best to everybody. Aspire.
Thanks for listening to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. If you liked this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to outsource your marketing to our team, go to clearbrand.com.